We are now going to see the last canto, the seventh canto of the Book of Yoga. This is definitely the smallest of the cantos in this book, but also a very crucial canto. The first edition of Savitri does not carry any title for this canto, but it seems that the title was written by the author himself in some other draft of this canto, and that title is The Discovery of the Cosmic Spirit and the Cosmic Consciousness. That is the title for this canto. Savitri has done something most unique. It is not only that she has discovered her soul. Of course, first she had to discover her soul, but with the discovery of her soul, what has happened is suddenly there is the inrush of the divine Savitri's soul into it. Savitri's soul and the divine Savitri's soul, they had joined together and fused into one. The human Savitri has now in her soul the power, the Shakti of the divine Savitri. It is that Shakti, that force which can conquer all the obstacles in this creation. But establishing the divine force in the soul is not sufficient. Surely it is a necessary condition, but it is not a sufficient condition. Savitri has the human elements, the mortal elements, because of her mortal birth. And it is these mortal elements which must be annulled. Only with the total annulment of her self can she house God in her. If this is not done, if this annulment were not to take place, then it would come as an obstacle in the work of the soul itself. So the nature born of this inconscient stuff had to be totally annulled. And that is what Savitri has done. That is Savitri's nirvana. She has blown out whatever was there in her of the inconscient stuff. She has now become a point of pure dimension, an absolute point, a bright cipher, a zero. In fact, she has now the formless liberation. All aspects of name and form of object, they had disappeared, and she is in the state of formless liberation. At that point, she would have a number of alternatives. With that formless liberation, which came to Savitri, several options open out. There is still in Savitri the memory of her being. Although the formless liberation has come to her, memory of being still remains in her. Memory of her being, the memory of her being here in this world remains in her soul. And it is that memory in her soul which can throw her back into this creation. It can become a rallying point for her to get thrown back into this creation. It can also become a launching force to push her out of this creation. Several options open out for Savitri. She can return out of the inconceivable. She might be nothing, not all. She might be nothing, or she might be all. She might enter as one who would come here to redeem the world. She might emerge from this inconceivable to emerge the suffering world, to redeem the world. She might know the contents of the cipher itself, that zero state in which she is now. She might know what it contains. She might flame back a portion of the all wonderful. She might flame back the power of the absolute. She might flame back as a mirror of truth, showing the truth to this world. She might come back in that state, or she might wake into God's quietude in a passive state beyond day, beyond night, beyond all the moments of time. Or she might rest appeased in white, blank eternity, the featureless blank eternity, white eternity. But infinite nothingness is the ultimate sign. Savitri was asked to annul herself, and that infinite nothingness is the ultimate sign for her. If that is not so, if that infinite nothingness is not the sign, then the real self might become unknowable, and what would remain is only a lowly absolute, negating all, negating all. The ignorant world shall be there nowhere. A lonely absolute, negating all. That would be the state. In fact, that is the state in which Savitri is. The lonely absolute, negating all. Under these conditions, It would mean that Savitri could totally disappear from this creation. Savitri could totally disappear from this creation. It might be her immersion into the infinite, into the absolute. It might be the layer of her being, of her soul. She would go entirely out of existence. That would be a loss. That would be something which would not be in conformity with the mission she has to carry out in this creation. Therefore, at this important juncture, whether Savitri would disappear into the absolute nothing or whether something can bring her back, it is a crucial stage in the yoga of Savitri. And it is this aspect which is what we see in the last canto of the book of yoga. In the little hermitage, in the forest's heart, in the sunlight and the moonlight and the dark, the daily human life went plodding on. The daily human life went plodding on. Savitri would have disappeared, but here the daily human life went plodding on. Even as before, with a small unchanging works and spare outward body of routine and happy quiet of ascetic peace. The peace of the hermitages, the rishis, the sages, the ascetics, living there in eternal peace, the peace, spiritual peace. Their routine, that life went on. The old beauty smiled of the terrestrial scene. Savitri sees the trees, the forest, the rivers, the mountains, the birds singing all around her. The old beauty smiled of the terrestrial scene. She too was her old gracious self to men. Everybody loved her, respected her, and she was back again. The ancient mother clutched her child to her breast, pressing her close in her environing arm, as if earth ever the same could forever keep the living spirit and body in her clasp, as if death were not there, nor end, nor change. The daily life went on, and the most wonderful thing that has happened is the ancient mother pulled her child back. Savitri would have disappeared into the ineffable, into that brilliant zero, into that absolute nothingness. But the ancient mother of this world, of this creation, controlling, governing, carrying on the movements of this earth here, it is that mother starting from doing her work right from the beginning, since the birth of this earth, that ancient mother pulled her child back. Savitri had taken immortal birth. She had become a child of the ancient mother, and this ancient mother would not like her child to disappear into the nothing. The ancient mother clutched her child to her breast, pressing her close in her environing arm, as if earth ever the same could forever clasp keep the living spirit and body in her class, as if death were not there, nor end, nor change. Accustomed only to read outward signs, none saw aught new in her. Nobody had the idea of the great spiritual change that had taken place in Savitri. They could not imagine, they could not gaze, they could not even think of it, conceive of it. They could not see it at all. Accustomed, because you are accustomed to read outward signs. By the outward signs only saw Savitri doing routine household works, and they saw only that aspect of Savitri. None divined her state. They saw a person where was only God's vast. Savitri had annulled herself totally, that God only be, and it is this human Savitri in whom was moving this God's vast. They saw a person where was only God's vast, a still being or a mighty nothingness. To all she was the same perfect Savitri, a greatness and a sweetness and a light poured out from her upon her little world. That world, that forest world, that hermitage, it is on that light went on. A greatness and a sweetness and a light poured out from her upon her little world. Life showed to all the same familiar face. Her acts followed the old, unaltered round. She spoke the words that she was wont to speak. She spoke the words that she was wont to speak. She was used to speak. It is those words she spoke, and did the things that she had always done, as if nothing had changed in her outward activities. Her eyes looked out on earth's unchanging face. Around her soul's muteness, all moved as of old. A vacant consciousness watched from within, empty of all but bare reality. Empty of all but bare reality. There was no will behind the word and act, because Savitri had annulled herself totally. So, whatever was done in her or through her was done by somebody else. She had annulled that only God be in her. It is that God action, it is that God word we spoke through her. There was no will behind the word and act, no thought formed in her brain to guide the speech. An impersonal emptiness walked and spoke in her. She was no more a person. An impersonal emptiness, that is what she had become. Impersonal emptiness walked and spoke in her. Something perhaps unfelt, unseen, unknown, guarded the body for its future work. Savitri was there because something guarded her to be here for the future work. Guarded a body for its future work. Or nature moved in her old stream of force. Perhaps she bore, made conscious in her breast the miraculous Nihil. In her breast, she's carrying the miraculous Nihil, origin of our souls, and source and sum of the vast world's events. That is that Nihil. What is that mystic cipher held? That mystic cipher held in her the vast world events. It is the origin of our conscious souls, the source and sum of the vast world's event, the womb and grave of thought, a cipher of God, a zero circle of being's totality. It used her speech and acted in her acts. It is not Savitri who was speaking or acting. It is that something, that impersonal emptiness she had become. In that emptiness, it is the miraculous Nahil which is speaking through her. It used her speech and acted in her acts. It was beauty in her limbs, life in her breath. The original mystery wore her human face. That is Savitri. It is that original mystery which has entered into human Savitri. Thus was she lost within to separate self. She was no more separate now from her soul. Her mortal ego perished in God's night. God's night, because there is no human faculty there to pursue things, to understand things, to feel things, to act upon things. It is not there. Therefore, it is the night of God. It is in that night of God the ego has perished. Thus was she lost within to separate self. Her mortal ego perished in God's night. Only a body was left, the ego's shell, afloat mid drift and foam of the world sea. A sea of dream, watched by a motionless sun, in a figure of unreal reality. That is how Savitri is going now. A figure of unreality. A sea of dream wandered by a motionless sun, in a figure of unreal reality. That is what Savitri is now. Only a body was left. An impersonal foresight could already see in the unthinking knowledge of the Spirit. Even now it seemed nigh done, inevitable. The individual die, the cosmos pass. This gone, the transcendent itself grows into a myth. The individual die, the cosmos pass. This gone, the transcendental grew a myth. The Holy Ghost without the Father and Son, or a substratum of what once had been, being that never willed to hear a word, restored to its original loneliness, impassive soul, silent, intangible. Thus gone, the transcendental grew a myth. The transcendental itself has become a myth. The Holy Ghost is there, but it is there without Father and Son. That is the state in which she is. Yet all was not extinct because of her body's self. Yet all was not extinct in this deep loss. The being traveled not towards nothingness. There was some high, surpassing secrecy. And when she sat alone with Satyavan, her moveless mind, with his that surged and strove in the hush of the profound and intimate night, she turned to the face of a veiled, voiceless truth, hid in the dumb recesses of the heart. or waiting beyond the last peak lined by thought. Unseen itself, it sees the struggling world and prompts our quest, but cares not to be found. Out of the distant vast came a reply. Something unknown, unreached, inscrutable, sent down the message of his bodiless light, cast lighting flashes of thought, not ours, crossing the immobile silence of her mind. In its might of irresponsible sovereignty, it seemed on it seized on speech to give those flaming shapes, made beat the heart of wisdom in a word, and spoke immortal things through mortal lips. That is how she was seized, and it is through her that the surpassing secrecy expressed itself, or listening to the sages of the woods, in question and in answer, broke from her in the assembly of the rishis around there, whenever they would gather and exchange their spiritual notes, listening to the sages of the woods, in question and in answer, broke from her high, strange revealings, impossible to man. Something or someone secret and remote took hold of her body for his mystic use. Her mouth was seized to channel ineffable truths. Knowledge unthinkable found an utterance. Savitri was only a passive instrument. She lent herself totally to the power which was expressing itself through her. Astonished by new enlightenment and the sages who would listen to her, they were astonished. Astonished by a new enlightenment, they had never realized those things in their spiritual pursuits. Invaded by a streak of the Absolute, they marveled at her, for she seemed to know what they had only glimpsed at times afar. These thoughts were formed not in her listening brain, because it was not there. These thoughts came from some other place. Her vacant heart was like a stringless harp. Impassive, the body claimed not its own voice, but let the luminous greatness through it pass. Her mind, her heart, her body, they all let the luminous greatness through her pass. A dual power at being's occult poles, she acted, nameless and invisible. Her divine emptiness was their instrument. Because of that emptiness, this dual power could act through her.